Welcome to the Modern Assyrian program on ANB SAT. My name is Carmen Morad. Assemblymember Heath Flora, representing the 12th District in the California State Assembly, is our special guest today. Heath Flora is a farmer, firefighter, and business owner with the kind of real experience desperately needed in the California State Assembly. He was raised on a farm and had been a small business owner and volunteer firefighter for 15 years. A lifelong farmer, Heath serves as a director for international sales at the Exact Corporation, a family-owned business that manufactures innovative products for both nut harvesting and forcible entry equipment for firefighting. Heath also owns Golden Valley Equipment, which sells used agricultural equipment. Prior to entering the business world, Heath received training as a paramedic and worked for CAL FIRE for 3 summers. A volunteer firefighter for over 15 years, Heath worked his way up the ranks, serving as firefighter, engineer, captain, and now a battalion chief. As a regional director for Sons of the Flag, Heath is working to bring together community leaders, pioneering physicians, experienced military service members, and dedicated first responders to advanced care and treatment for long-term burn victims. Through his church, Heath did extensive volunteer work in Cambodia, where he helped build churches and English schools. Heath is married to Melody Flora, and together they have 2 little girls, Lacey and Paris. Welcome, Assemblyman.
Glad to be here.
I want to begin, first of all, by thanking you for accepting my invitation for this interview. I know how busy you are. I know how your days and your hours are really full of all the activities that you have planned, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, absolutely.
Assembly member, I know before you were an assembly member and now that you are serving in Sacramento representing your constituents, you've been very active in the community. And I want to ask you, especially about Turlock, as members of the Assyrian community listening today, but the community at large. We live in a very diverse district, diverse community, especially in Stanislaus County. As you know, in Turlock, 1/4 of the population call themselves Assyrian Americans.
Right.
There's a very special, unique history of Assyrians in Turlock that goes back over 104 years. And you have attended many events, festivals, commemorative events in churches. And what is your understanding and your idea of what the challenges of the Assyrian communities are?
No, I appreciate it. It's been an absolute privilege to get to know the Assyrian community early on in the campaign. It was one of the first groups that we met with, actually. And it was started out because of a relationship that my grandparents had when they came to the Central Valley with the Assyrian community in Turlock. And so you've always heard about the Assyrian Christians within my family and kind of our relationship. So actually when Cooper, who was my district director, set all this up originally, it was pretty exciting for me to get involved and learn more about some of the challenges of the Assyrian community. And we can talk a little bit more on that as we go through, the interview. But the Assyrian community has some unique challenges, with language barriers, with DMV, the Assyrian Genocide, and making sure that that is recognized in the proper ways, making sure that we can honor the folks that have come before us within the community. So it's something that I'm actually really excited about, and it's a privilege to represent so many Assyrian Christians within Turlock.
Thank you, Assemblyman. We talked about the genocide earlier, and you actually voted in the Assembly Joint Resolution 3 with Assemblymember Nazarian for the commemoration of the Armenian genocide that also includes the Assyrian name in there. So that is a very important affirmation for the Assyrian community.
No, it is, and this year we're going to try to separate the two as well. I mean, they're both incredibly important, and we still feel that they need to be separated and both honored in their own unique, because they are, both a travesty, but they are uniquely different. And we just feel that they both hold merit and deserve to be recognized standing on their own merit. So as we were excited to support it, we also feel that there's a little bit more work to do there, and I'm excited. We're going to introduce another resolution to make sure that the Assyrians are properly represented.
That's an excellent idea. I do remember working with Assemblymember Kristen Olson, your predecessor, that there was a resolution introduced, and she did recognize it on the floor. Different communities honor their, and when I say honor, I mean commemorate what has happened. As a SAFO director, it was said that the best way to prevent other genocides to happen is to acknowledge the ones that happened before. And he was our speaker when at Stanislaus State University there was the first commemoration on a California state campus university that your office actually presented a wonderful resolution to the founder of the Modern Assyrian Studies on campus as well. So thank you for your continued support and work on that.
Oh, absolutely. Glad to.
Moving on to, you also mentioned DMV. As you know, different communities have different issues, especially with our seniors and those who are newcomers to the community, as they learn their way around, as they learn the language. And we encourage that. We encourage being more involved, becoming productive members of society. But as they're on their way, they do need some assistance, and you have supported the Assyrian language in the DMV paperwork and more assistance on that.
Absolutely, and something that we're working very closely with the DMV. And when we kind of started that process, it's a kind of a clunky process to get the DMV to actually agree to something. They tend to like their own little world and don't like people messing with it. So we wrote a very nice letter to them and explaining the situation, and they were actually relatively receptive. Receptive doesn't mean they move real quick on it. And so our job now is just to keep this constant pressure with them and making sure that they do what they said, and we continue to move this thing forward. And I am actually cautiously optimistic we can get it done in 2018. It's all up to DMV and how fast they actually want to move on it. But I know our staff has put a lot of pressure on them to work through that process. And then there's translation issues, making sure that the language and the verbiage is correct, so we're not, using wrong words where they should be one word versus another. So there is a lot of work, so I don't want to minimize the work that goes into it, but I also know that government work can get bogged down with bureaucrats every now and then. So we're just trying to make sure that this is not something that gets put on the back burner.
Absolutely. Cultural competency is extremely important, and we really value the relationship that we have with you and your office to understand what the challenges and issues are. I want to talk to you a little bit about the legislative proposals that you have worked on during your first term in office. It's very important to make sure that your constituents and members of the community watching this program know that you would like to hear from them for any proposals, and especially when you talked about water issues within our community, especially with safety of our communities and jobs and better paying jobs. Share with our viewers and your constituents what you have worked on, what has been successful, what bills you helped pass and stop.
So there's a lot of issues that we have in California right now. We're very different than the national Republican Party right now. Nationally, Republicans have a lot of control. They can do whatever they want. Within reason. California, we're directly opposite of that. We're in a Democratic state, we're in the super minority, which means it's very hard as Republicans, especially from the Central Valley, Turlock, and where the 12th district is, to get anything done. And so building relationships with the Democratic side is something that is very, very important, and making sure that we educate them on our issues. And a lot of times the Bay Area Democrats, who are great people in their own right, they're just different than us. And same with the Southern Cal, Republicans and Democrats both. It's not necessarily a partisan issue, because here in the Central Valley we are different. So when we talk about water issues, there was a particular bill that a legislator from the Bay Area wanted to run that gave California really a lot more control over the Scenic and Wild Rivers Act. Right now, within their jurisdiction is within basically the shoreline of the river. Well, they wanted to extend that out a 1/4 mile on both sides of the riverbank, which gave the state control. Well, obviously we know in the Central Valley that is prime farmland. And so essentially it was a little over 400,000 acres that the state was going to control, taking away from prime farmland within our communities. Well, that is just something that seemed like a great idea to them. And then we realized, wait a minute, you can't do that. And so it took a lot of work to educate them on why this was devastating for the Central Valley. When you come to property values and home prices, agriculture, and all those different things, they just have no concept of really what we deal with. So that was one big bill. It was a Laura Friedman bill, and it was just, we worked very closely with her staff to educate her on why this was a bad idea. So that was probably our biggest, as far as water goes, our biggest stop. And then on the State Water Resource Board, we're just going to continue to fight with them. They have total authority over the water issues. And so Assemblyman Adam Gray, who is a Democratic colleague, and we work very closely, but he is in the majority party, so that is a relationship that we value. And so working very closely to make sure that they do not overstep their bounds and making sure that our issues are addressed properly. As an ag community, it's devastating when they start taking the vast majority of our water, and what our constituents within the city limits of Turlock and Modesto don't understand, that they also have to give up the majority of their water. If the State Water Resource Board takes 40% more of the water, that's 40% from ag, and it's also 40% from the cities. So when we're in this drought, it's not just the ag community that gets hurt, it's our entire district that gets hurt. And so that's something that's very, very important for people to understand on the waterfront. It's not just agriculture, because that 40% comes across to everybody. So those are a couple issues that we've dealt with on the water side of things. And then there's a lot of other smaller issues that we're working with, as the state legislature passes environmental bills. We're working very closely that if they are going to pass those bills, it gives our communities the opportunity to meet their demands and give them the financial resources to meet that. We just don't pass new legislation and then allow business owners to fail because of this new regulatory burden. So we're just kind of trying to balance everything out with what the state legislature wants to do.
And also TID and MID play a big role in the regulations coming up, and
that's correct.
So it's wonderful that this representation of the issues that are so important to our area are heard by Sacramento and your colleagues.
Yeah, and we're so blessed in this area to have TID and MID. I mean, the board of directors for both of those agencies are some of the best in the business, and they spend a lot of their own money researching with the environmental groups to try to find a common ground. Because the days of just throwing bombs at the opposition party and expecting something to get done are over. We know we have to work with them. And so that's what I find exciting, is we've kind of put away this partisanship, and we know that we're going to have to work and address these issues. So I'm pretty proud of TID and MID. They've both done an incredible job.
It's about collaboration.
It's absolutely
basically
about collaboration.
Let's talk about public safety. What is happening in Sacramento with the bills that are being proposed that affect public safety and concealed weapon permits and everything that affects us out here in the Valley?
Sadly, public safety is a huge issue. I served on the Public Safety Committee last year, and it was absolutely the toughest committee that I had, just because the anti-law enforcement rhetoric that came through the state capitol was incredibly frustrating for me. We have state legislators, colleagues of mine, that absolutely despise cops, and they're the chair of these committees. And so when these people come in and have these conversations, it's just all one-sided. This prison realignment thing has just been an absolute disaster. And if you know anything about the prison system, there's a ranking system. The number 4s are the lifers, the ones that are going away for a long time. Number 1s are the petty crime folks. Well, they're dropping everybody's ranking down. They're kicking out the 1s and 2s back onto the streets. They're lowering the 3s and 4s to try to create more room. And so what do we have? We have auto thefts, home burglaries. All these different issues are on increase in the Central Valley because we're kicking these people out. The homeless population is running rampant because we're kicking these people out of jail. They've had no rehabilitation. They're not fixed yet. They're not able to re-assimilate back into society properly. So it's a tremendous issue. So we have a drug issue, and then we have a criminal aspect of that. And all of that is a problem for our homeless community. If you look at the numbers in the last 3 or 4 years on the homeless population within the city limits of Modesto, it has gone up probably 90% in the last 5 years. And that's a really, really tough thing to swallow, especially when you hear the day-to-day rhetoric and the anti-law enforcement sentiment that comes out of Sacramento. You talked about the concealed weapons and guns. You know, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Don't want anything to be done with that. But every single day, these bills come in, they're presented on the floor by people that have, quite frankly, never held a gun a day in their life, and they're acting like they're experts. And so we just have this massive amount of ignorance that we legislate from. And that is one of the biggest things that frustrates me. It's just we legislate out of Sacramento, out of complete and total ignorance. So it is frustrating, but it is something that is going to become a hallmark of our second year. We are really going to double down on public safety because, quite frankly, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of just sitting back and listening to this. And as a freshman, you kind of have to build the relationships, and people have to understand who you are and where you come from. And when you come from a place of caring, it's not like you don't like these people. But as a guy that came through CAL FIRE, and I've worked with ex-cons that have came through the rehabilitation programs of our fire service, and they get hired with the state of California. They're some of the best employees you could ever want, and they need those opportunities. But they will be the first to tell you that if they would have got kicked out a couple years early, they wouldn't have been ready to join society again. There's a process to this. So I would love to see our criminal justice system double down in our efforts for rehabilitation, and we start fixing some of these issues. So when they do get released from jail, they can actually go get a job, go buy a house, start renting, do whatever they need to get themselves back into a normal society and normal citizenship.
Be productive members of society.
Exactly.
So rehabilitation is what you believe in, that you would like to present in as a part of legislation.
Absolutely. We don't spend a lot of money in rehabilitation right now. Actually, it's been cut tremendously. You look at like a lot of the auto shops, the auto body, and all of those things. It's all been cut. And Folsom Prison in Northern California, they actually have a really good program. All the license plates in California are made in Folsom Prison. And so when you walk through that and you see these guys being productive and having a skill set, those are guys like in our family business that we could hire. And so that's what I'm excited about, is give these guys something that when they get out, we all make mistakes. They just happen to get caught. And when they get out, we need them to have an opportunity to be productive again. And so that's what I would prefer to focus on, as opposed to just getting rid of their sentences, kicking them back out on the streets, and they have nothing. So they're homeless, they get hooked back on drugs, and then we're just in this cycle.
I see. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with Assemblymember Flora.
Figaros Pizza گکل خلیاته که مبلغی ان چم خط ingredients. مشروب پیتزای رابا بسیمه Figaros Pizza اتلا خلیات رابا طامانه مخ ساندویچ سوسیس و کلباس سالادولویه کشک بادم جون و رابا appetizers بسیمه مخ هالوپینیو پاپرز. Figaros Pizza کم صحی رالاخون گجمایات گوره مخ بدیلده و بیبی شاورز و زویاخ پریشه و کم سا دلیور و داله خلیاتوخون. Figaros Pizza اتلتلای آرباش و پان پریشه و ایلا خامندن چم ریشای پیتزاریاز گمدیت ترلاک. و کم سی های ریلاخون بیتلالی شان پریشه لیسوی رای، انگلیس و فارسی. کم سیتون مچخیتون لن آلتره سیپار ترت منیا وست مونتا ویستا آونیو گمدیت ترلاک و قاریتون لن آلتره سیپار اجا اشتت لا آربا خا. Thomas Auto Sales Gumantica, California. قشوصار شنه Thomas Auto Sales اتلا نسيانا جزبنتت أطموبيلة جمديتت مانتيكا كاليفورنيا. Thomas Auto Sales كبالخي رابا قشية قميتت خدوتا غزونانا قد بالت خدية بأطموبيل خاتي ين مبلخة بخا ديما رابا مرديانا. Thomas Auto Sales كم سخيرخ لكم بفاينانسينج وشغلت لونز ميقرأ كمال توماس مارد توماس Auto Sales مقروب له قيكوت زوناندنا بديابل $10 ديسكاونت مال ليست برايس أدرس دي إن إيلا 8 East Yosemite Avenue جمديتد مانتيكا كاليفورنيا كم سيتون قاريتون لن آل 3 سيبر أجا 3 لا أجا سيبر At Figaros Pizza, all of our pizzas are crafted using only the freshest ingredients. With 34 locations across the country, Figaros balances the charm of a family-owned pizzeria and the top-notch quality of a nationwide restaurant. Whether you'd like dinner for the family or catering for a party, we can accommodate you. We have pan crust, thin crust, original and gluten-free, and if pizza isn't enough, you can always add some of our mouth-watering breadsticks and jalapeno poppers, all of which we use our signature 100% real California cheese. We have a variety of appetizers like chicken wings, salad olivier, and sandwiches, and much more. We also do catering and delivery to accommodate any occasions. With competitive prices and great food, there is no beating Figaros. We are located at 2028 West Monte Vista Avenue, Turlock, California, and you can reach us at 209-634-4141.
We're back with Assemblymember Heath Flora representing the 12th District in the California State Assembly. Assemblymember Flora, let's talk about the Senate Bill 5 that we talked about earlier and how that affects the Valley and your constituents and the companies and organizations.
So SB 5 was a park bond. And typically, bonds can either go one of two ways. You can either love them or you don't. We can be over bonded, so it's something that has to be properly weighed. I was actually a fan of this particular bond because it gave our constituents, our voters, an opportunity to pass it. And within the park bond, there was a significant amount of money for the Central Valley, which is something that we desperately needed. And one of them to the citizens of Turlock was, you all know that you're going to get a new water treatment plant, and that's roughly a $200 million project. And within this park bond, there's right about $30 million in it to go directly to that project. So I'm pretty excited about that because right now the ratepayers are going to have their bills adjusted for this, which is not always great. As everything in life continues to go up, we want to make sure we keep everything as low. So when TID and Turlock City Council and everybody voted on this, it was something that after the fact we were really able to work with the governor's office and make sure that we got some funding in there through this bond to try to minimize that rate increase for as much as we can. So that's why for me this park bond is very, very important. There is $30 million for one particular project, and then there's about $100 million for levy. Not really no new levies, but levy maintenance. Within the northern part of our district, we have a lot of levees. And when these floods come, which we had a lot of flooding last year, it's very important that our levee system is up to speed and up to date. And so I'm excited that there's actually money to take care of some of those issues.
That's great news. Now residents of Turlock know why their utility bills went up, correct?
Yes.
Now
yes.
they know.
Now they can know, and I'm sorry, I didn't support that, but we'll do everything we can to get funding for you. So.
What kind of a time frame is there on that water treatment plant?
I think they're breaking ground very soon. It is a project that is desperately needed. I don't fault TID or Turlock or the mayor for doing this. I understand exactly what they're doing, but it's always hard, especially when as citizens and especially California, when we're the most heavily taxed state in the country. From income and federal and state, all of the different taxes. And then we just put a new gas tax on top of us. All of those things. And now we're going to ask, residents to pay a little bit more on their water bill to fund a water treatment plant. It is unfortunate, but it is one of those things that the community desperately does need. And so we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that the state funding, and there's also some grant programs that we can, low interest, no interest grants that we're currently working on to make sure that we're keeping those rates as low as possible.
One more thing that you're very passionate about that you had talked to about was education, high-tech jobs, and how to keep these jobs here for our youth, to keep them from going away to other locations. What are we doing about that?
So currently, Sacramento is a little bit hesitant on career technical education. So I'm a big career tech advocate. That's my background, coming out of public safety, coming out of a family that is manufacturing. I know how hard it is for us to hire welders and laser operators and sheet metal workers. And so right now within the state and the community, the junior colleges and the high schools, there's been this doubling down on getting back these programs within the high schools and junior colleges, because we're seeing the skills, the trades go away. We've sent everybody to college. They come home from college with a liberal studies degree and $60,000 in debt, and they're working at Starbucks for minimum wage. And so with housing costs in California, they're never going to be able to afford that American dream with the school debt. So that's something that we're really working with the state on, is making sure that our students understand that you can absolutely be successful in life without a 4-year degree. There are stackable certificate programs that I'm very excited about. We can get these kids, whoever it is, into an apprenticeship program, and they can learn a trade, and then they can build on that. You know, right now there's electricians that are making $90,000 to $120,000 in the Bay Area.
Wow.
And so there's some incredibly high-paying jobs out there. And with all of our infrastructure needs, and California is building and building and building, we're going to need people with these skills. So I'm actually excited about that. Last year we ran a bill, it was about a $300 million funding mechanism for CTEs, and the governor didn't allow it through. So we're going to work with him again this year and try to figure out what his issues were and see if we can't get that passed. So we're going to really work hard on career technical education funding.
It's very exciting, Assemblyman, when you talked about motivation and inspiration for those kids perhaps that a college degree is not in their future, how they can still have good paying jobs, they can still contribute back with these positions that are in demand.
Absolutely, and when you put these kids, and there's studies across the country, when you put these kids to work and they start building, whether it be an overpass or a school or a courthouse in their community, they take pride in that. And so the crime rate goes down. They're not graffitiing on the walls because they built the walls. You know, when it comes to all of those sorts of issues, and you bring community pride back into these projects, it is exciting. And so I think, you know, that's how you kind of start from the inside out and changing the community, especially like within the city of Modesto. I mean, we do have a few issues here. And as we're working with the council trying to grow our city, we put these kids to work that are from here. You know, maybe we can turn things around.
Assembly member, I want to ask you about a new law that will kick in January 1 in the state of California, and that is the cannabis, the recreation and commercial. And as someone who comes from public safety and with your background, as you know, the different cities and municipalities are coming up with their own guidelines to see how this will be done. How do you think this will have an impact on communities and cities other than just the tax, but the impact, the positive and negative on our communities?
I'll be honest, I don't know if I see too many positives right now. There may be a tax thing. Colorado is the first to do this, and they're really not seeing a tremendous benefit from it. The tax versus crime ratio is really kind of a wash. I am concerned about it. You know, right now when you walk down the streets of Modesto or Sacramento, you don't smell a lot of tobacco smoke. You know, we've gone through this massive tobacco-free California. Nobody wants, you know, cigarette smokers anymore. But everywhere you go, you smell marijuana. I mean, it's just this everyday walk of life is you're smelling marijuana on the streets. And I find that pretty concerning because it's no matter what they say about it. Now, I do think there is medical benefits to certain aspects of marijuana. I mean, I've talked to kids that have seizures, and where you take, you know, some of the THC and you're using the oils. So I do not want to undermine that aspect of marijuana, because I do think there is some very good medical benefits to this. But just legalizing this thing, I've never seen a guy that's high that is really motivated to go to work. And so when we're talking about these kids and talking about changing their future and getting them jobs into career technical education, we don't need that. We need them to be motivated. We need them to be excited about it. We don't want them to just stay at home, get stoned on their couch, and collect a welfare check, which is kind of the method that I see this going. It's just hard for me to see that we have a society of people smoking marijuana and they're real motivated to get out there and do something with their lives. So I do see some pretty big concerns with it. Now I hope and pray that I'm wrong. You know, I really do. I don't see the upside to it right now. And you know, if there is a tremendous boom, then we'll see what happens. But I do think, like Modesto just passed, there's no dispensaries within the city limits of Modesto or downtown, which I find very exciting. And so I hope that as these cities put these laws together, they do what's best for the community, and we can kind of address some of these issues. But I do find it kind of fascinating that the anti-tobacco people are kind of leaving this particular issue alone. You know, they come in and lobby against, they got all mad at me because I took money from some cigar companies in the campaign. Mm-hmm. And so they came in to yell at me about that. And so we talked about marijuana. I was like, well, when we come in and lobby against marijuana, then we can have this conversation. Because in my mind, I kind of see it somewhat the same. One of them is very similar to the other in a lot of ways. And so I'm not seeing a benefit right now.
Well, thank you for that candor expression, because it is very new.
Yeah.
And with our Board of Supervisors, with our city councils, for example, City of Turlock completely opted out. Mm-hmm. But there are different cities that, you know, they just have to come up with these regulations. Right. And it's so new, and I'm hoping that it gets revisited. Yeah. And there's code enforcement involved, there is, you know, our law enforcement is involved as well.
Well, and that's another thing. You know, we have these massive things on DUIs. You know, we don't want people to drink and drive. Well, there is no beta testing whether you're stoned and you're driving, if you're high when you're driving. And so we need the enforcement aspect to catch up with what we've legalized. And I do think once that we get that under control, I think we can have, I mean, we can deal with it like tobacco. I'm sorry, not tobacco, but alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I'm hoping we get to sooner than later.
That sounds wonderful. Assemblymember Flora, is there anything in closing that you would like to share with your constituents, mm-hmm. with our viewers, that have to do with the major highlights that we discussed, which were water, public safety, high-tech jobs, and other legislative proposals that you talked about that you hope to be working on and passing?
I just think, you know, what we need most people to understand is we need civic engagement, and we've talked about that. I was pretty excited. We sent out a lot of mailers mm-hmm. Through the state to different groups on different aspects on what we can do for you, law enforcement, Megan's Law, some of these different issues. And I'm pretty excited with how many we've gotten back, because not very many districts see that kind of engagement. And so within the Assyrian community, if I can encourage, you know, the 12th district as a whole, just please get engaged, stay informed. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways that we can get news out there, and not all of it's true. And I really do find that, especially even within, you know, friends of mine on the right, you know, there's bills that were passed that, you know, people are pretty upset about, when the truth of the matter is they're a little bit different than what they're saying, because they don't have a good way to go get the information. And so I just want people to see our office as a resource, that if you have a law, if you have an issue, call us mm-hmm. and let us give you the information. It may not always be what you want to hear, but it will always be the truth. And so if I cannot stress enough civic engagement and making sure that the constituents understand that our office is theirs and we're here to represent them. And so if we don't know what they're coming from or where they're coming from, it's hard to represent. So we'd love to hear from everybody.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you in closing for the time you've given us today, for the information you've shared with us, and your continued support of the Assyrian community, and for all the work that you're doing on behalf of your constituents. We really appreciate it. We wish you the best, and hopefully we're going to have you on our show again.
Absolutely. Love to do it again. Appreciate the time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You.
Join us next time on the Modern Assyrian program on ANB South. This is Carmen Morad.